your dumb guy had the opportunity to answer some questions over the phone with some rally goers. And one guy was very concerned about rents going up, and he was asking Donald Trump about rents, and this is Donald Trump's convoluted answer.
To do about bringing down the rent and things like that in the economy, because out of 8 children that I'm a father and a stepfather to, 5 of them are struggling, and I'm giving them part of my income on a regular basis.
By the way, another case for less fucking kids. I mean, this is not the... There is, we do talk about personal responsibility, and the government does need to be more helpful. And, we do live in a country where we are free to have as many children as we want to. But if you have 8 kids and you have all this stuff and you don't, maybe you should kind of slow down on having the kids. I don't know.
How are you going to make the economy, not just the, the food and electricity, but bring down the rent prices, the housing prices, so that these kids can survive without their parents' help?
Such a good question, Mr. President.
You're right. I hear it very well. And I tell you, first of all, I love the people that you're with. I know that I must have at least 99, perhaps 100% of all of them. And I think they're incredible. We are going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to bring down the cost of energy. Energy is what caused the worst inflation, I think, in the history of our country. Food prices are up 50%, sometimes more. You look at bacon. Bacon is quadrupled. You can't order bacon. You can't order anything. We're living horribly. We have the worst inflation we've probably ever had in our country, and it started because of energy. We're going to drill, baby, drill, and then we're going to have China and all of these countries that were treating us good when I was there toward that. I mean, it took me a long time to get them to behave properly. All of these countries are going to, again, stop. Like 4 years ago, I could ask you, you were in great shape. You had low energy costs. You had low food costs. Everything was good. You could buy a house. You had low interest rates, 2% interest rates. You had gasoline at $1.87. Now it's $5. And by the way, going up very substantially. But you had gasoline at $1.87 a gallon. Nobody talks about that anymore. Nobody even can believe it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. We've got to get the energy prices down, and everything else is going to be tumbling down with it, the prices.
Lana.
And that guy's probably like, yeah. He didn't even answer the fucking question.
Actually, that guy didn't even put him back on camera. He might have been sort of like,
I hope so.
You're getting the price of bacon down.
I just told you about rent. And let me tell you, like, this is how, like, get out of the fucking bubble. Biden just now put $100 million to pathways to affordable housing.
Yep.
He just funded that $100 million to help build more affordable housing, like to break down the barriers. Like, he has invested money into that. Trump can't tell you that because he ain't never done it, and he ain't gonna do it because his boys are the people who own the apartments and the corporations and the rents and these luxury apartments that are going up. Like, fucking think about that. Trump could not answer that question, just like Trump could not answer the question during the debate about how to lower the cost of daycare. Child
right.
care. He ignored it.
Yep.
3 times they asked him. He ignored it. What's that? What is that?
Yeah. And, it's another grifting answer because so he has learned that people believe that because he was president, I've said this a million times, and repetitive sometimes, being repetitive is key, because when you say things over and over again, people will either, and I'm not even asking you to believe, well, you should believe it because I know what I'm talking about here, but research it. But Donald Trump will allow you to believe that he's responsible for the low gas prices and the interest rates at 2%. We've been over this a million times. Interest rates are 2% because of COVID. The Federal Reserve put the rates down to 0. They lowered because of that lowering, it lowered the rates to the lowest in the history of this country. It didn't matter if Donald Duck was the fucking president, the rates would have been 2%. Gas prices would have been under $2 because nobody was driving during COVID.
Yeah.
It's simple supply and demand. Now, when they did lower the interest rates down that low, I think, when the Federal Reserve, when they do that, they're trying to spark the economy to where it just doesn't go completely in the tank. But what it did is it exploded. I mean, absolutely exploded the housing market to a time where we have never seen it before. And that's why I say this idea, and I don't really hear anybody talking about this, and they should be talking about this more, this idea that putting the rates down as low as they were actually hurt us. And that's where we're at right now. The reason why we're at in the place we are right now is because they overreacted and put the rates down way too low. It exploded the housing market. And now nobody wants to sell their house because they're all at 2% interest rate when they refinance their house. So the inventory is low. There's not enough houses to buy. And the rates are still a little bit high because of the interest rates. The Federal Reserve raised the interest rates like they knew they had to avoid. And I'll tell you, I've had this conversation a million times. The way they controlled, I'm not talking about just the Federal Reserve, I'm talking about the Biden administration, everybody, the way they controlled the economy from the time it was at its worst to right now is so incredible. The fact that we didn't go under a major recession, we had 2 straight years of unemployment under 4% during a time where the interest rates were higher, where inflation was higher. That is unheard of. And for anybody to say that Joe Biden destroyed our economy, you don't know what you're talking about. You just don't. And that drives me insane. He did a phenomenal job. And if you just look at, don't listen to me. Go to any economic expert and they will tell you that the United States of America is the envy of all other countries in their economic recovery since COVID.
Yeah. And this drill, baby drill, Biden has been drilling like just excess. That's why our gas prices are so low right now. And we're not dependent on the Saudis because we have been drill. Like, what the fuck, man? He just has a catchy phrase and everyone's like, oh my God, yes, drill. It's like, the fuck you think's been happening?
Well, Lana, he had a press conference at Mar-a-Lago last week, and I did a show last week, and I did a lot of clips from the press conference, and this one I missed for some reason, but I want to play this because it's based on what we're talking about. This is Donald Trump being asked about the power of the Federal Reserve and how he would handle it, and if this right here doesn't scare the shit out of you, you're either not paying attention or you're not understanding what he's saying, and I would strongly suggest you start to understand what he's saying here. It's hard to hear, but the reporter's asking about the Federal Reserve and the interest rates and whether or not they should start lowering the rates. Donald Trump, by the way, this whole press conference had a very hard time hearing everybody. I mean, we're having a hard time hearing this, but he's in the room with them and
it's his room.
It's his room and he can't hear anything.
Mar-a-Lago. Cheap equipment doesn't work.
Does that Federal Reserve? I know the Federal Reserve.
Look, the Federal Reserve is a very interesting thing, and it's sort of gotten it wrong a lot. And he's tending to be a little bit late on things. He gets a little bit too early and a little bit too late. And, that's very largely it's a gut feeling. I believe it's really a gut feeling. And I used to have it out with him. I had it out with him a couple of times very strongly. I fought him very hard. And, we get along fine. But I feel the president should have at least say in there. Yeah, I feel that strongly. I think that in my case, I made a lot of money. I was very successful. And I think I have a better instinct than, in many cases, people that would be on the Federal Reserve or the chairman.
Okay, so that should scare you for quite a few reasons. One is no president should be influential on the say of the Federal Reserve. They are hired for a reason. They are to be separated from the powers of the executive branch. They are not supposed to because they're there for a reason. They're hired for a reason. They are the economic experts. The
Right.
second thing is that Donald Trump calling himself an economic expert, if you go back and look at his record, he is absolutely not. He's a fucking nightmare with everything he puts his hands on. And what is going to happen with this Project 2020 is they are absolutely going to fire the head of the Federal Reserve and replace him with their yes men and whoever Donald Trump puts in there, and he tells them this is what we're doing from now on will be
Right.
an economic disaster, and economic experts agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That scares me. That
Mhm.
really scares me. We talk about, again, he is a clown, but this is the kind of shit that could be scary if he wins. Him being in charge of the Federal Reserve
He's in his
is,
gut. His
yeah,
gut feeling.
I know, like, yeah, his gut. He's the one making fun of other people's gut. He should take a look at his own. But, this is, I know a lot of people don't follow it or, don't remember this, but back in August of 2019, Donald Trump, and this is my guesstimation at best, but I think it's a pretty educated guess. He was pushing the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. This was before COVID. He was pushing them to do it. And the reason why he was pushing them to do that is because he wanted really good economic numbers as we started to go into 2020 with the election coming up. So he thought that, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and then all hell broke loose. And they did wind up lowering the rates and everything, but because he handled COVID so incredibly poorly, people are like, we got to get him the fuck out of here.
Right. Right.